I'm Evelyn, 38 years old, and I made a decision last Christmas that destroyed my relationship with my son. As a high school counselor who specializes in conflict resolution, I thought I knew better. I thought inviting Marcus the boy who had bullied my son Liam for years to our family Christmas dinner would create healing and closure. Instead, it shattered the trust my son had in me. He walked out that night and hasn't really come back since. Now I'm facing another holiday season without my child, living with the consequences of my well-intentioned but catastrophic mistake. Before I share my story, where are you watching from today? Hit subscribe and let me know in the comments if you've ever made a decision with good intentions that backfired terribly. Sometimes the hardest lessons come from our most heartfelt mistakes. I've lived in Portland, Oregon my entire life. The constant rain suits my personality, persistent, nurturing, sometimes melancholy. For the past 15 years, I've worked as a counselor at Westlake High School, specializing in conflict resolution and peer mediation programs. My colleagues often joke that I can get even the most stubborn teenagers to shake hands and make up. If only that skill had transferred to my personal life. Before everything fell apart, Liam and I had what I thought was an unbreakable bond. We became a team of two when my husband Michael died from pancreatic cancer 11 years ago. Liam was only 8 at the time, too young to fully understand what was happening, but old enough to feel the crushing absence his father left behind. Those first years were a blur of grief counseling, learning to be both mother and father, and figuring out how to rebuild our lives without the person who had been our foundation. Michael was a musician and artist, and Liam inherited his creative soul. While I scrambled to maintain our financial stability on a school counselor's salary, Liam found refuge in art and music. He would spend hours in his room creating intricate drawings or teaching himself to play his father's old acoustic guitar. Those artistic pursuits became his salvation during the darkest periods of his life, both after losing his father and later when the bullying began. My parents live in Florida and offered to have us move in with them after Michael died, but I knew uprooting Liam from his home would only add to his trauma. So we stayed in our modest 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, the one Michael and I had purchased with such hope when I was pregnant with Liam. Every corner holds memories, the height marks on the kitchen door frame, the dent in the living room wall from when Liam was learning to ride his skateboard indoors during a particularly rainy winter, the garden Michael started that I've maintained as a living memorial. I won't pretend the years following Michael's death were easy. I made plenty of mistakes as a suddenly single parent. I was too permissive at times, too strict at others. There were nights I cried myself to sleep wondering if I was ruining our son, but Liam and I developed routines and traditions that sustained us. Sunday morning pancakes, summer road trips in our aging Honda, and Christmas was always special. Even when money was tight, I made sure Christmas maintained its magic. We would decorate our artificial tree while playing Michael's favorite holiday albums. I saved all year to ensure there were always meaningful presents. Liam and I would bake his grandmother's cookie recipes and watch classic Christmas movies. As he got older, the traditions evolved, but remained sacred. When Liam was 14, we started volunteering at a local homeless shelter on Christmas Eve morning, something that became as important to our holiday as the presents or decorations. Dating as a widowed single mother was complicated. I had a few short-lived relationships over the years, but no one serious until Greg came along 3 years ago. He's a middle school science teacher I met at a district training session. Patient, kind, with a subtle humor that reminds me a little of Michael. Greg understood from the beginning that Liam and I were a package deal, and he never tried to replace Michael in Liam's life. Instead, he carved out his own relationship with my son, bonding over science fiction novels and camping trips. My professional life gave me a sense of purpose beyond motherhood. Helping teenagers navigate conflicts and personal challenges felt meaningful, especially after witnessing how resilient young people can be. I developed a reputation throughout the district for my restorative justice approach to student conflicts. I genuinely believed in the power of mediation, accountability, and forgiveness to heal wounds and rebuild relationships. That philosophy guided both my professional and personal life. It's ironic that as a counselor, I spent my days helping other people's children while sometimes missing what was happening with my own. I thought I was more attuned, more aware than other parents because of my training. That professional confidence would eventually blind me to the most important thing, what my son actually needed from me. Despite the loss that shaped his early years, Liam grew into a thoughtful, creative young man with a small but loyal circle of friends. He wasn't the most outgoing kid, preferring deep conversations with 1 or 2 people to large social gatherings. His sensitivity, which made him an incredible artist, also made him vulnerable in the sometimes brutal social hierarchy of high school, and that vulnerability made him a target. The bullying began during Liam's freshman year of high school. I didn't work at his school. We had both agreed that would be too uncomfortable for him, so I didn't witness the early warning signs. It started with small incidents, exclusion from lunch tables, whispered comments in the hallway, accidental, bumping in crowded spaces. Liam didn't tell me at first. By the time I realized something was wrong, the situation had already escalated. Marcus Reynolds was the ringleader. He was everything Liam wasn't: athletic, popular, effortlessly confident. His father was a prominent business owner in our community, the kind of man who donated just enough to school functions to have influence without actually being involved. Marcus had a talent for finding people's insecurities and exploiting them publicly, and he had decided Liam was an easy target. The first serious incident happened during Liam's sophomore year. He had submitted a drawing to the school art show, a haunting portrait of a boy surrounded by shadowy figures that represented his grief over losing his father. It was powerful, raw work that his art teacher had praised for its emotional depth. The morning after the art show opened, Liam arrived at school to find photocopies of his drawing plastered across hallways and lockers, crudely modified with sexual imagery and slurs about his masculinity. Marcus and his friends had broken into the display after hours. When Liam called me from the school bathroom, sobbing so hard he could barely speak, I immediately left work and drove to his school. The administration's response was infuriatingly inadequate. Because they couldn't prove who had defaced the artwork, Marcus received only a warning. The principal suggested that perhaps Liam was too sensitive and should toughen up a bit. I was livid, demanding action while trying to comfort my devastated son. That was just the beginning. Over the next 2 years, the torment became more sophisticated and relentless. Marcus created a fake social media profile using Liam's name and image, posting embarrassing content and soliciting strangers for inappropriate conversations. He would film Liam during vulnerable moments, like when he got emotional during a class discussion about parent loss, and share the videos with commentary mocking his feminine sensitivity. He orchestrated a campaign to ensure Liam was excluded from social events, pressuring other students to choose sides. The physical intimidation was subtler but equally damaging: shoulder checks in hallways that appeared accidental to teachers, tripping that looked like clumsiness, belongings that mysteriously disappeared or were damaged. Marcus was careful to maintain plausible deniability, always with a ready excuse or a confident, "It was just a joke, right, Liam?" I scheduled no fewer than 12 meetings with school administrators over those 3 years. I brought documentation, witness statements, screenshots. I quoted school policies and district guidelines. I leveraged my position as a fellow educator to demand action. But Marcus's father was a major donor to the school's athletic program, and consequences never materialized beyond temporary suspensions that only made things worse when Marcus returned. The impact on Liam was devastating. My once quietly confident son became withdrawn and anxious. He developed insomnia and lost weight. His grades dropped. He stopped playing guitar, saying he wasn't any good anyway. He asked to be homeschooled, but I worried isolation would only make his depression worse. Instead, we found a therapist, Dr. Sarah Chen, who specialized in adolescent trauma and bullying. Dr. Chen helped Liam develop coping strategies and rebuild his self-esteem. She explained to both of us how bullying creates a sense of helplessness and shame that can trigger post-traumatic responses. Liam began to understand that Marcus's behavior reflected Marcus's own insecurities, not Liam's worth. Through therapy, art once again became Liam's outlet and sanctuary. The few friends who stood by Liam during this time became his lifeline. Tyler and Aisha never wavered in their support, creating a protective bubble around him when possible, and standing up to Marcus despite the social consequences. They spent countless hours at our house, the only place Liam felt truly safe, working on art projects, or simply existing in a space free from judgment and fear. As Liam's junior year progressed, the situation became unbearable. His anxiety attacks were increasing, and even with therapy, he was struggling to function. After a particularly vicious cyberbullying incident, where Marcus created a poll rating the most pathetic losers at school with Liam at the top, we made a decision together. Liam would complete his high school requirements through an accelerated online program and graduate a semester early. It was a difficult choice. I worried about him missing senior year milestones, but Liam was resolute. "I just need to get out, Mom," he told me. "I can't breathe there anymore." Working intensely through the summer and fall of his senior year, Liam completed his graduation requirements by December. He was accepted to Pacific Northwest College of Art, his first choice school about 2 hours away from Portland. For the first time in years, I saw genuine excitement in my son's eyes as he planned for a future away from Marcus's shadow. By the time Liam left for college the following fall, he seemed to be healing. In his new environment, surrounded by other creative students who valued his sensitivity rather than mocking it, he began to rediscover his voice. His texts and calls became more animated as he described projects' new friends and supportive professors. The distance from Portland and from the memories of those painful years gave him room to breathe and grow. But the trauma lingered. Certain social situations still triggered anxiety. He would occasionally withdraw for days after encountering someone who reminded him of Marcus. Dr. Chen had warned me that recovery from prolonged bullying isn't linear. Healing would come in waves with setbacks along the way. Liam was building a new life, but the scars remained beneath the surface. As for me, I carried my own wounds from that period, primarily guilt. Despite all my professional training, despite the countless hours I'd spent helping other children navigate bullying and conflict, I had failed to protect my own son. The system I believed in had failed him too. That guilt would eventually drive me to make the catastrophic mistake that cost me my relationship with Liam. No, the seeds of my disastrous decision were planted on an ordinary Tuesday in early November last year. I had stopped at Compass Coffee, a small shop near my school, to grab a drink before a late meeting. Lost in thoughts about an upcoming student mediation, I didn't immediately register who was behind the counter until I heard a tentative "Mrs. Parker." I looked up to see Marcus Reynolds, now 19, wearing an apron and a nervous expression. My first instinct was anger. This was the young man who had made my son's life hell for 3 years. But something in his demeanor gave me pause. He looked different, thinner, less confident, his formerly perfect appearance now slightly disheveled. "I thought that was you," he said, his voice quieter than I remembered. "How are you? How's Liam?" The casual mention of my son's name reignited my anger. "Liam is doing well, thank you. He's at art school now away from here." Marcus nodded, his eyes dropping to the counter. "That's good. He was always really talented." After an awkward pause, he added, "I owe you both an apology. What I did to Liam in high school, it was terrible. I've been wanting to say sorry, but I never knew how to reach out without making things worse." I studied him skeptically. "That's quite a realization to come to now." "I know it probably doesn't mean much, Marcus admitted. "But I've been in counseling for the past year. My parents got divorced right after graduation, and I've been dealing with some stuff that made me look at how I treated people, including Liam." My professional interest was piqued despite my personal reservations. I ordered my coffee and stepped to the side while Marcus prepared it. When he handed it to me, he said, "I understand if you don't want to talk to me, but if you ever think Liam would be open to hearing an apology, I'd really like to try to make amends somehow." I left without committing to anything, but the encounter stayed with me. As a counselor who believed in restorative justice, I found myself intrigued by Marcus's apparent change. Had the bully really recognized the harm he'd caused? Could there be healing in a facilitated conversation between them? Over the next few weeks, I returned to the coffee shop several times. Each visit revealed more about Marcus's journey. His parents' messy divorce had exposed financial improprieties that had cost his father his business and social standing. Marcus had deferred college to work full-time while attending community college classes at night. He was living in a small apartment with 2 roommates, learning for the first time what it meant to struggle. "I was such an entitled jerk in high school," he admitted during one conversation. "I thought I was better than everyone because of my dad's money and status. I took out my own insecurities on people like Liam, who had real talents and depth. The counselor I'm seeing helped me see how messed up my thinking was." As November progressed, the idea of facilitating some kind of reconciliation between Marcus and Liam began to take root in my mind. In my professional experience, I had seen powerful healing come from restorative conversations between those who caused harm and those who experienced it. The process often freed victims from lingering trauma and allowed perpetrators to make meaningful amends. I shared the idea with Greg during dinner at his place one evening in late November. His immediate reaction was concern. "If this sounds like crossing a professional boundary into your personal life," he said carefully. "Have you talked to Liam about this at all?" "Not yet," I admitted. I wanted to assess whether Marcus is genuine first. "And you think he is?" "I do. He's changed a lot since high school. Life has humbled him." Greg set down his fork and reached for my hand. "I understand your professional instinct to facilitate healing, but this isn't a case at school. This is your son who was deeply hurt by this person. Liam should have complete agency in deciding whether he wants any contact with Marcus. His words made sense, but I was already too invested in the narrative I was creating. The powerful reconciliation, the healing, the closure that would finally free Liam from the lingering effects of his trauma. I imagined Liam releasing years of pain, Marcus making proper amends, and both young men moving forward unburdened by the past. Of course I'll talk to Liam first, I assured Greg, though I had already begun formulating a plan. I just want to make sure the opportunity is available if he's open to it.
Candy, initiate.
I consulted several colleagues about the situation, framing it hypothetically, to get their perspectives. Their responses were mixed. My friend Janelle, a fellow counsellor, cautioned me about potential re-traumatization. Victims of bullying often feel pressured to forgive for others' comfort, not their own healing, she warned. Meanwhile, my colleague Derek, who ran restorative justice programs, thought the scenario had potential if handled carefully and with the victim's full consent. I selectively focused on the encouraging feedback while dismissing the concerns. In my mind, the pieces were aligning perfectly. Christmas was approaching a season of forgiveness and new beginnings. Liam would be home from college for 3 weeks. Marcus was genuinely remorseful and ready to make amends, and I, with my professional training, could facilitate a healing conversation between them. The more I thought about it, the more certain I became that this could be a profound gift to my son, freedom from the lingering trauma that still occasionally shadowed him. I convinced myself that once Liam saw how changed Marcus was, he would embrace the opportunity for closure. I believed that as both his mother and a trained counsellor, I knew what would help him heal. Without discussing it with Liam, I approached Marcus at the coffee shop in early December. I've been thinking about what you said about wanting to apologise to Liam, I told him. He'll be home for Christmas soon. If you're serious about making amends, perhaps you could join us for Christmas dinner. Marcus looked surprised but grateful. Are you sure I wouldn't want to impose on your family holiday? Christmas is about new beginnings, I said with conviction. If you're truly committed to making things right, this could be a meaningful step for both of you. We exchanged phone numbers, and I promised to confirm details closer to the date. As I left the coffee shop that day, I felt a sense of purpose and rightness about my decision. I was so certain I was creating an opportunity for healing that I never seriously considered the possibility of causing further harm. The last person I consulted before setting the plan in motion was Dr. Chen Liam's former therapist. I should have heeded her immediate concern. Evelyn, while reconciliation can be powerful, it must be initiated by the person who experienced the harm, she emphasized during our phone call. Surprising Liam with this encounter, especially during a family holiday, could feel like another violation this time by someone he trusts implicitly. Her warning gave me momentary pause, but I had already committed to the plan in my mind. I'll prepare him beforehand, of course, I assured her. I wouldn't just spring it on him.
Jane.
Even with preparation, this should be entirely Liam's choice, made without any pressure or expectation, Dr. Chen continued. And a neutral setting would be far more appropriate than your home, which has been Liam's safe space. I thanked her for the advice, but had already decided to proceed. I told myself I would present the idea to Liam gently and respect his decision, but deep down I had already convinced myself that he would agree once I explained the benefits. I was about to make the worst mistake of my life, and I couldn't see it coming. Liam arrived home from college on December 20th, tired from finals, but visibly happier than he'd been in high school. His hair was longer, he'd gained healthy weight, and there was a quiet confidence in his demeanour that warmed my heart. The first 2 days of his break were filled with comfortable routines, watching movies, decorating the house, catching up on his art projects, and new friends at school. I kept looking for the perfect moment to tell him about my plan with Marcus, but each time I started to bring it up, I hesitated. Part of me recognised that his reaction might not be what I hoped, and I didn't want to disrupt the peaceful happiness of having him home. So I delayed telling myself there was still plenty of time before Christmas. On December 23rd, Liam and I spent the morning volunteering at the homeless shelter as we had done for years. The experience was always grounding, a reminder of our blessings and the importance of compassion. As we drove home afterward, Liam was reflective. "I'm glad we still do this, Mum," he said, looking out at the rainy Portland streets. "College is great, but being home for these traditions means a lot." His words made my stomach twist with anxiety about the conversation I could no longer postpone. When we arrived home and settled in the living room with hot chocolate, I finally gathered my courage. "Liam, there's something I want to discuss with you about tomorrow's dinner," I began cautiously. He looked up from his mug. Is Greg not coming? No, Greg will be there. It's about another guest I've invited. I took a deep breath. I ran into Marcus Reynolds a few weeks ago. He's working at a coffee shop now, and we've had several conversations. He's changed a lot since high school, and he's expressed sincere remorse about how he treated you. Liam's expression froze, the mug suspended halfway to his lips. Why were you having conversations with Marcus? It started accidentally, but then I saw an opportunity. I explained, shifting into what Greg later called my counselor voice. He's been through some difficult times since graduation. His parents divorced, his family lost their money and status. He's in therapy and working through a lot of issues, including his behaviour toward you. Liam set his mug down carefully. What does this have to do with Christmas dinner? The careful neutrality in his voice should have warned me, but I pressed on. I've invited Marcus to join us tomorrow. I think this could be a powerful opportunity for healing and closure, for both of you. The silence that followed was deafening. When Liam finally spoke, his voice was dangerously quiet. You invited the person who tormented me for 3 years to Christmas dinner without asking me. I wanted to create a safe space for reconciliation. I said, already sensing I had miscalculated badly. As a counsellor, I've seen how transformative these conversations can be when, I'm not one of your cases at school, Liam interrupted, his voice rising. I'm your son. How could you possibly think I would want to spend Christmas with the person who made me consider suicide? His words hit me like a physical blow. Consider suicide, Liam. You never told me it was that bad. Because I didn't want to worry you more than you already were, he said, standing up abruptly. But that doesn't mean you get to decide I should just forgive and forget for the sake of some textbook reconciliation moment. That's not what I'm suggesting. I insisted, though. Of course, it was exactly what I had envisioned. I just thought if you could see how he's changed. I don't care if he's changed. Liam's voice cracked with emotion. I don't care if he's sorry. I don't care if he's learnt valuable life lessons. What he put me through isn't something I have to forgive just because it would make a nice Christmas miracle story. I realized then how badly I had misjudged the situation, but instead of backing down, I doubled down. Holding on to resentment only hurts you in the long run, I said, falling back on counsellor platitudes. This could be a chance to release that burden. Liam looked at me with a mixture of hurt and disbelief. So now my trauma is a burden I need to release, for whose benefit, mum, mine or yours? Of course for you. I insisted. Everything I do is for you. No. Liam said, his voice suddenly calm in a way that frightened me. This isn't for me. This is about you wanting to fix everything to create some perfect resolution that makes you feel better about what happened. Did you ever consider that I might be healing in my own way on my own timeline? I just thought, you didn't think about what I needed. He cut me off. You decided what would help me without asking, just like you always do. He turned and walked toward his bedroom. Liam, please, I called after him. We can call Marcus and cancel if that's what you want. He paused at the hallway entrance. What I want is for my mother to have respected me enough to ask before inviting my abuser into our home for Christmas. Then he disappeared down the hall, the quiet click of his bedroom door more devastating than any slam could have been. I spent the rest of the day in a state of anxious dread, texting Greg about the disastrous conversation and debating whether to cancel with Marcus. Greg urged me to call it off immediately, but a stubborn part of me still believed that if Liam just gave it a chance, the encounter could be positive. I told myself he needed time to process the idea that by morning he might see the potential value in the meeting. It was one of many catastrophic misjudgments I made during this period. Christmas morning dawned grey and rainy, fitting the sombre mood that had descended on our home. Liam emerged from his room only briefly declining to participate in our traditional Christmas breakfast or gift exchange. I'm not feeling festive, he said flatly. Maybe later. I spent the morning preparing dinner while periodically checking on Liam, who remained in his room with headphones on, sketching intensely in his notebook. Around noon, I texted Marcus, confirming our dinner plans, still clinging to the hope that the evening might somehow salvage itself. Greg arrived early, concern evident on his face, as I explained Liam's continued withdrawal. Are you sure you don't want to cancel with Marcus? He asked again. It's not too late. I think once they actually talk, it could still be positive. I insisted, though. My confidence was wavering. Liam might surprise himself with how healing it could be. Greg looked doubtful, but supported my decision, another kindness I didn't deserve. Marcus arrived at 5 o'clock neatly dressed and carrying a small wrapped gift and a bouquet of flowers. He looked nervous, but determined, and I felt a surge of misplaced pride in what I still believed could be a meaningful exchange. "Thank you for inviting me," he said quietly as I took his coat. "I know this can't be easy for anyone." I introduced him to Greg and then called for Liam, who took several long minutes to appear. When he finally emerged from his room, his face was a careful mask of neutrality, but I could see the tension in his shoulders and the slight tremor in his hands. "Hello, Marcus," he said with formal politeness that broke my heart. "Liam." Marcus nodded, extending the small gift. "This is for you. You don't have to open it now, or ever really. It's just something I wanted you to have." Liam accepted the package without looking at it, placing it on the side table. "Thank you." The initial interaction was painfully awkward, with stilted small talk about college and the weather as we moved to the dining room. I tried to facilitate comfortable conversation, asking Marcus about his classes at community college, and Liam about his art projects, desperately trying to find common ground. Throughout the meal, Liam remained polite but distant, answering questions minimally, and avoiding direct engagement with Marcus. Marcus, to his credit, seemed to understand the tension and didn't push for more interaction than Liam was offering. He spoke about his therapy journey and the realizations he'd had about his behavior in high school. "I was dealing with a lot of pressure from my dad to be perfect," he explained at one point. "Taking it out on others was wrong, but it was the only way I knew to handle it at the time." I nodded encouragingly, still hoping for the breakthrough moment I had envisioned. "That's such an important realization, Marcus. Understanding the roots of harmful behavior is the first step toward change." Liam remained silent, pushing food around his plate. As we finished the main course, Marcus turned directly to Liam. "I know saying sorry doesn't undo anything, but I am truly sorry for how I treated you. The things I did and said, there's no excuse. You didn't deserve any of it." Liam looked up, meeting Marcus's eyes for the first time. For a brief moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, my plan was working. Then Marcus continued. "If there's anything I can do to make amends, I'd really like to try. Your mum thought this dinner might be a good first step toward putting the past behind us." It was the wrong thing to say. Liam's gaze shifted to me, betrayal evident in his eyes. "My mum thought that, did she?" The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Before I could respond, Marcus added, "Everyone deserves a second chance, right? I mean, we were just kids back then." That was the breaking point. Liam set down his napkin with deliberate care and stood up. "We weren't just kids, Marcus. I was a kid who lost his father and was trying to survive. You were a predator who systematically destroyed my sense of safety and self-worth for 3 years." His voice was calm, but vibrating with suppressed emotion. "And you," he turned to me, "you were supposed to be the one person who protected that safe space. Instead, you invited him into our home on Christmas of all days without my consent, because you thought it would make a nice narrative about forgiveness." "Liam, that's not fair," I began, but he cut me off. "What's not fair is having to sit across from the person who told me I should kill myself because no one would miss me while my mother smiles and talks about healing and growth." He turned back to Marcus. "I don't know if you've changed or not, and frankly, I don't care. Your journey of redemption is yours to make, but it doesn't require my participation or forgiveness." Marcus looked stricken. "I never meant—" "You meant every word, every action, every moment of cruelty," Liam said. "The fact that you regret it now doesn't erase that truth, and it doesn't entitle you to my forgiveness." He turned to me, his eyes brimming with tears he refused to let fall. "Mom, I love you. But this crossed a line I didn't think you were capable of crossing. You put your need for a neat resolution above my right to decide when and how I deal with my trauma. You turned our home, the one place I felt safe, into a stage for your counselor fantasy. That's not what I intended," I whispered, finally understanding the magnitude of my mistake. "Intentions don't change impact," Liam said, using one of my own frequent phrases against me. "I need some space from this. From you." With that, he walked to the entryway, grabbed his coat and keys, and left. The quiet click of the front door echoed through the house, leaving a silence more devastating than any argument. Marcus left shortly after his apologies, lost in the haze of my shock and grief. Greg stayed, helping me clear the untouched dessert and providing silent support as I tried repeatedly to call and text Liam with no response. "He just needs some time," Greg said gently. "He'll come back when he's ready." But I knew even then that something fundamental had broken between Liam and me. In my misguided attempt to heal his old wounds, I had inflicted a new one that might never fully mend. The days following Christmas passed in a fog of anxiety and regret. Liam didn't come home that night or the next. My calls went straight to voicemail, and my texts showed as delivered but unread. On the third day, I received a brief message from his roommate Connor, confirming that Liam had returned to their apartment near campus and was physically safe, but didn't want to speak with me. Relief at knowing he was safe quickly gave way to a deeper ache. My son had fled back to school during his holiday break rather than remain in our home or even in the same city as me. The magnitude of my violation became increasingly clear with each passing day. A week after Christmas, I received my first direct communication from Liam, a text that simply read, "I need space. Please respect that." Okay, those 6 words both relieved and devastated me. He was at least willing to communicate, but the formal tone and clear boundary felt like a wall between us. I replied with a simple acknowledgement, though I wanted to pour out pages of apology and explanation. January arrived cold and bleak. I returned to work going through the motions of counselling students while feeling like a complete fraud. How could I guide others through conflict resolution when I had so catastrophically failed in my own family? My colleagues noticed my distraction, but I offered only vague explanations about family stress after the holidays. Greg remained steadfastly supportive, despite having warned me about this very outcome. He never said, "I told you so," instead offering practical help and emotional comfort as I navigated my new reality. Respect his boundaries, but, he advised. Show him you're listening now by honouring his request for space. Gay. It was the hardest advice to follow, but ultimately the only path forward. When the spring semester began, I sent Liam a carefully worded email asking if he needed anything from home for his classes. His reply was brief, but civil, requesting that I ship a few art supplies and books he had left behind. I packed everything with meticulous care, including his favourite snacks and a short note, expressing my love without pressuring him for contact. February brought another blow when Liam informed me he would not be coming home for spring break. "I've made plans with friends," his text read without further explanation. I had to accept this new distance, this consequence of my actions, though it felt like physical pain. In March, I finally sought professional help for myself, beginning sessions with a therapist specialising in family estrangement. Dr. Powell helped me understand that my efforts to fix the situation quickly would likely only push Liam further away. "Right now, your job is to respect his boundaries and do your own internal work," she explained. "Healing the relationship can only begin after you've addressed your own patterns." Those patterns became increasingly clear through therapy. My need to control outcomes, my difficulty separating my professional identity from my personal relationships, my tendency to believe I knew better than others what they needed. I had to confront the uncomfortable truth that my help often served my needs more than those I claimed to be helping. In early April, nearly 4 months after Christmas, I received an email from Liam that broke the dam of emotions I had been carefully containing. It was formally written almost like a letter he might submit for a class assignment, but its contents were deeply personal and painful. "I've been working with my therapist here at school to process what happened at Christmas," he wrote. "I need you to understand why your actions were so damaging. By inviting Marcus into our home without my consent, you prioritized your narrative of forgiveness over my actual healing process. You used your professional training to justify overriding my autonomy in making decisions about my own trauma." He continued, "The home we created after Dad died was supposed to be my safe haven. You turned it into another place where I had no control, where my boundaries weren't respected, where someone else decided what was best for me without asking. That betrayal hurts more than anything Marcus ever did, because I expected protection from you, not violation." The email concluded with a clear statement. "I need time and space to rebuild my sense of safety and trust. I don't know how long that will take. Please do not attempt to contact me except for logistical necessities. I will reach out when, if I am ready for more communication." Reading his words was excruciating but necessary. For the first time, I truly understood the harm I had caused from Liam's perspective without the filter of my own justifications. I had betrayed my son's trust in the name of helping him, and no amount of good intentions could erase that impact. I respected his request, limiting my communication to brief practical matters when absolutely necessary. When his 19th birthday arrived in May, I sent a card and gift with no expectations attached. He acknowledged receipt with a simple thank you text, small progress that I tried not to overinterpret. The house felt emptier than ever, without even the prospect of Liam's occasional visits. I found myself standing in the doorway of his room, sometimes looking at the space that still held traces of his presence. Art supplies, books, the guitar he hadn't taken to college. The physical reminders of his absence were constant companions to my regret. Friends and family struggled to understand the situation. My parents calling from Florida couldn't comprehend why I didn't just keep trying to reach out to Liam. "He's your son," my mother insisted. "He can't just cut you off forever." I had to explain repeatedly that respecting Liam's boundaries was the only way to demonstrate I had learned from my mistake. Through weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Powell, I began to understand that my pattern of overstepping boundaries wasn't new, it was just that this time, the consequences were severe enough that I couldn't ignore them. I had always prided myself on fixing situations, on having the right solution for every problem. That approach had worked in my professional life, but it had created a blind spot in my relationship with Liam. "You need to distinguish between supporting and controlling," Dr. Powell explained. "True support honors the other person's agency. Control, even when well-intentioned, takes that agency away." Summer arrived with no significant change in our estrangement. Liam had decided to stay near campus for an internship at a local gallery, another decision that kept physical distance between us. I channeled my energy into volunteer work and focused on my relationship with Greg, who had been remarkably patient throughout this difficult period. In July, I joined a support group for parents estranged from their adult children. Hearing stories from both sides of similar situations helped me gain perspective. Some parents remained defensive about their actions, insisting their children were overreacting or ungrateful. Others had done the difficult work of acknowledging their part in the estrangement and were slowly rebuilding connections based on new, healthier patterns. I was determined to be among the latter group, however long it took. As part of my therapeutic process, I wrote unsent letters to Liam expressing my genuine remorse without the expectation of forgiveness. I recognized that true apologies don't ask for anything in return, not even understanding or absolution. These letters helped me clarify my own accountability without burdening Liam with my emotional processing. My relationship with Greg deepened through this challenging time. His willingness to witness my vulnerability and support me without judgment created a space where I could be authentically broken without fear. "You're doing the hardest thing," he told me one evening as we sat on my porch. "You're giving Liam what he actually needs instead of what you think he needs. That's real love." The experience transformed my approach as a counselor as well. I became much more attuned to the subtle ways professionals can impose their own narratives onto those they're trying to help. I started emphasizing autonomy and consent in my student mediations, ensuring that participants had genuine choice about their participation and the process. As fall approached, bringing with it Liam's sophomore year of college, I had to accept that we might face another holiday season apart. The thought was painful but no longer devastating. I was learning to sit with the consequences of my actions without demanding immediate resolution. By November, a full year had nearly passed since my fateful decision. The approach of the holiday season brought renewed grief, but also a strange acceptance. I had begun to rebuild my life around the reality that my relationship with Liam might never return to what it had been. It was a painful truth, but facing it directly was part of my growth. Greg and I discussed our plans for the upcoming Christmas. "You could come to my sister's with me," he offered. "Being around family might help." I appreciated the invitation, but decided instead to volunteer at the homeless shelter for the entire day. "I think I need to acknowledge this anniversary in a meaningful way," I explained. "Helping others seems appropriate." As the month progressed, I prepared for a holiday without Liam, setting up a small tree with just a few ornaments and donating to art education programs in his name, as a private gift he might never know about. I no longer harbored fantasies of a dramatic reconciliation or perfectly timed holiday reunion. Real healing, I was learning, rarely follows storybook timing. A week before Christmas, I received an unexpected text from Liam. "I'll be in Portland from the 23rd to the 26th, staying with Tyler. Would you be open to meeting for coffee on the 24th? The message took my breath away. After nearly a year of minimal contact, Liam was initiating a meeting. I responded carefully, agreeing to the time and place he suggested, without pushing for more. When Christmas Eve arrived, I found myself sitting nervously at a small table in a cafe downtown, watching the door for my son's arrival. When he walked in, the physical changes in him were immediately apparent. He'd grown his hair longer, gained confidence in his posture, looked more adult than the boy who had walked out of my house a year ago. "Hi, Mum," he said, his voice steady as he sat down across from me. "Hi, Liam. Thank you for suggesting this. I fought the urge to reach for him, respecting the careful distance he maintained. After ordering drinks, we navigated through initial small talk about his classes and art projects. I was careful not to press for personal details or emotional revelations following his lead in the conversation. Eventually, Liam set down his cup and looked directly at me. I've been doing a lot of work with my therapist this past year. About boundaries, trauma, family dynamics, all of it. I've been in therapy too, I told him. Learning similar lessons, I think. He nodded. I know. Tyler mentioned seeing you around town with a different perspective. Said you seemed changed. The fact that he had been asking about me even indirectly gave me a flicker of hope. I've had to confront a lot of hard truths about myself, I admitted, about how I've sometimes confused control for care, especially with you. That's a good way to put it, Liam agreed. The thing is, Mum, what happened last Christmas wasn't really about Marcus, not entirely. It was about a pattern of you deciding what was best for me, without considering what I actually needed or wanted. You're right, I acknowledged. I've come to see that clearly now, and I'm truly sorry not just for the Christmas disaster, but for the pattern it represented. Liam was quiet for a moment. I don't think I'm ready for a full reconciliation yet, he said finally, but I've reached a point where I'd like to try building something new between us, something with different boundaries and expectations. I'd like that too, I said, careful to contain the surge of emotion his words evoked. Whatever you're comfortable with. For now, maybe we start with occasional texts and coffee every few weeks when I'm in town, he suggested. Small steps. Small steps sound perfect, I agreed. We talked for another hour, not about the past, but about his current projects and some of the changes in my approach to work. As we prepared to leave, Liam surprised me by handing me a small wrapped package. It's not much, he said, just something I made in one of my classes. I waited until I got home to open it, a small, beautiful ceramic piece, shaped like a door, slightly ajar. The symbolism wasn't lost on me, a door neither fully closed nor completely open, but offering possibility. Greg came over that evening and I showed him Liam's gift. It's a beginning, he said, holding me as I finally allowed myself to cry with relief. A different beginning than I imagined, I replied, but maybe a better one ultimately, one based on who Liam actually is, not who I think he should be. On Christmas Day, I volunteered at the shelter as planned, finding meaning in service, rather than trying to recreate traditions that no longer fit our situation. Liam sent a brief text that evening, "Merry Christmas, Mum, coffee again in January." Those simple words felt like the most precious gift I could have received. Not forgiveness exactly, but openness to a path forward. The journey of rebuilding trust with my son will be long and sometimes difficult. There will be setbacks along with progress, and our relationship will never be exactly what it was before. But I've learnt that genuine love means respecting the other person's boundaries and needs, even when they differ from what you hoped for or expected. If my story teaches anything, it's the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Forgiveness is a personal process that happens within an individual. It can't be forced or scheduled, especially around symbolic times like holidays. Reconciliation, when it occurs, is a mutual journey that requires respect, patience, and a willingness to build something new rather than simply restore what was lost. I share this painful experience because I know I'm not the only parent who has overstepped boundaries with good intentions. Sometimes our deepest wounds come from the people who love us most, who genuinely believe they're acting in our best interest. If you've been on either side of this dynamic, please know that healing is possible, though it rarely follows the timeline or path we might wish for. Have you ever had to rebuild trust with someone you love? What did you learn from that experience? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and personal growth. Share this with someone who might be struggling with boundaries or estrangement. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in these painful journeys can be the first step toward healing. Thank you for listening, and remember that respect for others' autonomy is the foundation of true love, even when it means accepting paths different from what we envisioned.